All right, diving in today, folks, and we're tackling some pretty fascinating stuff. You guys sent in a bunch of material about the 1982 film Gandhi, and honestly, it's more than just a movie, right? I mean, we're talking about a life, a movement, a whole period of history.
Absolutely. And what's really cool is the sources you sent cover everything, like behind the scenes, the story itself, how people reacted to it. It's a lot to unpack, but that's what we're here for.
Exactly. So, like, our mission today is to figure out why this movie, this biopic, hit people so hard, why it's still relevant.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to this.
Yeah.
How do these big epic stories, and this one really is epic,
Right.
how do they shape the way we see huge figures like Gandhi in these world-changing events? We're going to look at how the film portrays his life, the whole massive production, the critics, the audiences, the awards. It is a lot.
Okay, so let's start with the film itself, right? The man in the moment, as they say. The movie, it just throws you right into it with Gandhi's assassination in 48, Delhi.
And that opening, it's powerful, right? You see him there in the garden praying, surrounded by people like Nehru and Patel, key players in India's future. And then, boom, Nathan Godse, 3 shots. The filmmakers, they really set the stage with that scene. Like, this is the end, but now we're going to show you how we got here.
And then, bam, we're in South Africa, 1893. Young Gandhi, a lawyer, gets kicked off a first-class train compartment just because of his race.
Yeah, that's the catalyst, right?
Yeah.
That moment of just pure humiliation, it throws the whole racist system in his face. And, many Indians in South Africa at that time were practically slaves, brought there under horrible conditions. It was a deeply messed-up situation, and that's what he starts fighting.
And in his response, it's so Gandhi, right? No violence, he starts a peaceful movement, gets the press involved, and then that powerful image, burning the passbooks in Pretoria.
It's a brilliant strategy, too. The police come down hard, but it backfires on them. Suddenly, the whole world is watching. Even the New York Times is covering it. Public opinion starts to shift, and the authorities, they're forced to rethink those passbook laws. That's nonviolent resistance working right there.
And from that, we get the Phoenix settlement. It's not just a protest camp. It's this whole community based on his ideas, modeled after ashrams. They're printing their own newspaper, organizing marches, strikes against those discriminatory laws.
It's like they're building a new way of life, right? Showing that it's not just about resisting the bad stuff, but creating something better. And of course, this gets him in trouble, ends up in jail. It's a constant theme. You stand up for what's right, there's a price to pay.
And even in jail, he's still making moves. Meeting with the British Viceroy in South Africa, and it's kind of a mixed bag, right? They promised to repeal some laws, but then there's this whole thing about limiting Indian immigration.
Yeah, it shows you that change, it's rarely clean and easy. There's always compromise, negotiation. But even with those limitations, it was a step forward. And eventually, it leads to his return to India with Reverend Charles Freer Andrews.
And what a return it was. 1915, Hero's Welcome in Mumbai. The film really captures that feeling of hope and expectation.
Oh, yeah. But then there's this guy, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who gives him some crucial advice. He says, hey, you've been away a long time. Travel India, really get to know it. You might feel like a stranger in your own land. It's a reminder of how vast and diverse India is, and how Gandhi needed to connect with everyday people, understand their struggles.
And he does exactly that, traveling all over, spreading his message of nonviolence. And the film zeroes in on the Champaran farmers who are being forced to grow indigo for the British, basically trapped in poverty.
And this is where you see his empathy, his ability to connect with the most vulnerable. The indigo thing was straight up exploitation, and he throws himself into the fight, showing his commitment to justice for everyone, especially the marginalized.
Then comes his call for a nationwide strike on April 6th, directly challenging British rule. This was at the same time they were giving the police even more power. But instead of violence, he calls for a day of prayer and fasting.
This is Gandhi in a nutshell. It's not just about opposition. It's about embodying your principles, even in the face of oppression. Prayer and fasting, it was a way to mobilize people, exert moral pressure, but without resorting to violence.
And the British, they imprisoned him, of course, but the public outcry is so huge they have to release him without bail, almost like they realized keeping him locked up was just making things worse. And then we have the Jallianwala Bagh massacre.
That was a turning point. It was a horrific event, and it showed the stark contrast between Gandhi's nonviolence and the brutal reality of British rule. It galvanized the movement for independence, but also highlighted the immense challenges ahead.
And amidst all this, we see these Hindu-Muslim conflicts start to emerge, adding another layer of complexity to the fight for independence. Eventually, this leads to Gandhi getting arrested again, this time for sedition, 6 years in prison.
The Hindu-Muslim issue, it's a recurring tragedy, and Gandhi, he constantly pushed for unity, for bridging those divides. But those forces of division were so strong, and his arrest for sedition shows how desperate the British were getting, trying to silence him, stop the momentum for independence.
But even in prison, his influence is undeniable. And then comes the Salt March, maybe the most iconic moment in the entire struggle. The film does a beautiful job portraying that long march to the ocean, defying the British salt tax.
It was a stroke of genius, honestly. Such a simple act, but
Yeah.
so symbolic. It resonated with everyone in India, rich, poor, Hindu, Muslim. It caught the world's attention. And then the Congress starts distributing this free salt everywhere, directly undermining British authority. What made the Salt March so brilliant, according to the sources you sent, was how it targeted something everyone needed and understood: salt. It made the British oppression real and personal for everyone, in a way that other movements hadn't quite achieved.
That pressure on London, it eventually leads to Gandhi getting invited to Britain. He's meeting with the Windsor family, all these important figures. It's quite a moment to see him on the world stage after all those years of struggle.
And you see the political game being played, right? The British, they're under pressure to grant independence, but they're also trying to divide India along religious and social lines, hoping to delay things, maybe weaken the new nation. But you also see Gandhi realizing that the British, they're losing their grip, their will to fight is fading.
And then, 1947, independence finally arrives. A huge moment, but the film doesn't shy away from the Hindu-Muslim violence that erupts, Gandhi's desperate attempts to stop it, and the ultimate heartbreak.
That violence, it's such a tragic part of the story. Independence was a monumental achievement, but it came at a terrible cost. The film recognizes Gandhi's central role in leading the fight, but also the limitations of his power to prevent the bloodshed that followed.
Okay, so let's talk about making this film, bringing the story to life. They filmed it from November 80 to May 81, and get this. They shot the funeral scene on January 31st, 1981, 33 years to the day after the actual event.
That commitment to getting the details right, it's impressive. And the budget was only $22 million, which is not a lot for a film of this scale. But it made over $127 million worldwide, $52 million in the U.S. alone. People really connected with it.
And that funeral scene, we got to talk about that. 350,000 extras. That's not just a crowd, that's the most people ever directed in a single scene, a Guinness World Record. With all the CGI we have today, it's hard to imagine that being topped. It shows you how ambitious Attenborough was.
Oh, yeah. And even the casting, it's interesting. They considered Dustin Hoffman, Alec Guinness, John Hurt for the role of Gandhi. But they went with Ben Kingsley, a British theater actor, not a big name at the time, turned out to be a brilliant choice.
Absolutely. His performance is what makes the film so powerful. And the premiere was in Delhi, November 30th, 82, then the U.S. release on December 8th. From there, it just took off.
The reception was incredible, both in India and internationally. Ben Kingsley's performance, Attenborough's direction, the story, the editing, the set design, people loved it all.
You see it in the box office numbers, too. $183,000 in the first 5 days alone. $75 million grossed outside North America. It was the third highest grossing film of the year and still one of the top 10 highest grossing British independent films, even after adjusting for inflation. And they even held free screenings in Mumbai and Delhi. That's how important this film was to people.
It really shows you its cultural impact. And the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, 85% approval rating. Most agree Attenborough did a great job, but it's Kingsley's performance that really anchors the film.
And the accolades, they just kept coming. In 2010, the Independent Film and Television Alliance named it one of the 30 most significant independent films of the last 30 years. That says a lot about its lasting legacy.
For sure. And then there are the awards. At the 55th Academy Awards, it won 8 out of 11 nominations. Best Picture, Best Director for Attenborough, Best Actor for Kingsley, Original Screenplay, Cinematography, Art Direction, Costume Design, Film Editing. It was a sweep.
And the Golden Globes, they loved it too. Best Foreign Film, Best Director, Best Actor in a Drama, Best New Star of the Year for Kingsley, Best Screenplay.
The BAFTAs were right there with him.
Yep.
Best Film, Best Director, Best Leading Actor, Most Promising Newcomer for Kingsley again, and Best Supporting Actress for Rohini Hattangadi.
And the list goes on. Awards from the British Society of Cinematographers, the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, the National Board of Review, the New York Film Critics Circle, all recognizing Kingsley's performance. Plus, wins from the American Cinema Editors, the David Di Donatello Awards, the Directors Guild of America, so many others. It was even nominated for a Grammy for the score by Ravi Shankar and George Fenton.
What's also striking is the international recognition. like those David Di Donatello Awards, a nomination from the Japanese Academy. Even the Italian dubbing, directed by Manlio De Angelis, shows how far its reach was.
So looking back at Gandhi, it's more than just a history lesson. It's an experience, a film that captures the essence of this incredible man and a pivotal moment in history. Its success, the awards, it all shows how much Gandhi's story resonates with people, even today. And the scale of the film, especially that funeral scene, it shows the passion and dedication that went into making it.
Absolutely. And when you consider its impact, all those awards, it really makes you think. What does its lasting popularity tell us about how we see leadership, nonviolent resistance, the fight for social justice, and how do films like this, these big biographical stories, shape the way we remember history, how we see these iconic figures? Those are questions we're thinking about for sure.